Yes, you look good mixing up, guys.
Right, good afternoon, councillors. Welcome along to this October meeting of the Community Wellbeing and Regulatory Committee. Welcome to those joining us on the live stream, and also noting that Evelyn is joining us via Zoom. Hope your health improves soon. Bye. We have apologies from Councillor Pottinger and Mayor Clark. Would somebody move that they're accepted, please?
Move.
Trish and Pania. Put that all in favour.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Any declarations of interest that any of you have for any of the items coming up today? Silence reign, and we all got... just back to the apologies, noting that there'll be early departures at about 10 to 5, quarter to 5 for Alex and Steve. They've got another meeting to get away to. Minutes of the Community Wellbeing Regulatory Committee from September 10. Somebody want to move that they are received? Tom
Second.
and Leslie? Confirmed, sorry, not received. Any questions, comments? Put that all in favour.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Minutes of the Community Wellbeing Fund Subcommittee from September 26. Trish, are you moving? Thank you. And Steve? Any comments? If not, put that motion all in favour.
Aye.
Against? Carried. We've got the minutes of the Southern Regional and Heritage Joint Subcommittee from September 27. Barry will move, I'll second. Evelyn, happy for you to second that?
Whichever, Mr. Chair.
Yep.
I'm happy. I forgot that you were actually present. Thank you.
I didn't. It lives with me to this day. Thank you. Happy for you to second that. Any points
Thank you.
or comments? Put that all in favour.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Minutes of District Licensing Committee from September, I'll move.
Second.
Questions or comments? Put that all in favour.
Aye.
Carried. Dog impound trends. This followed a question from a previous meeting when the annual report was being filed. Council sought some clarification on those trends. Welcome along, Gillian. Thank you very much for the report, which speaks for itself. Councillors, are there any questions? I'll go to you first, Councillor Campbell, since you asked the question in the first instance. You were looking for the trends. Are you comfortable with the information that's there?
Well, it clearly answers the question, and obviously the comment about seeking to minimise the number of dogs euthanised is very welcome, and I'm certain that officers do that. But obviously having an increasing trend in that respect is, concerning. But I read the paper and understand the reasons for it. Thank you for that.
Thanks, and actually it was good that it was pointed out because it can become part of the annual report ongoing. I do notice that there are trends for abandoned animals elsewhere throughout the country that have been increasing upwards post-pandemic, or post the height of the pandemic, because it hasn't really finished. No further questions? Lucky escape, Gillian. Job well done. Move that the report is received. Councillor Campbell moved. And
Seconded.
Leslie seconded. Thank you. Put that all in favour.
Aye.
Against? Carried. That brings us to the Donovan Park Reserve Management Plan Stage 1, which includes a hearing, and we've got one submitter to be heard. But we'll go through the motions first, which is we receive the report, receive the submissions, the summary of submissions, accepts the late submission from the Greys, receives a letter of engagement from Te Marama, notes the submission that we will be hearing very shortly, and notes the deliberations on stage 1 will be at the November meeting of this committee. So is there a mover for that? Tom and Barry. Thank you for that. So at this point, Mr. Henderson, welcome along. Thank you for coming and joining us. Would you like to take a seat? Thank you for making the submission and the time to join us this afternoon. Essentially, the next 10 minutes is yours if there are things that you're wanting to point out, and at the end of that, councillors may have questions for you.
Right. Thank you.
Councillor Broad's just going to pull that microphone in, which is going to make it a little easier for people on live stream to hear us.
Yes. Okay. Is that all right?
That's better. Thank you.
Thanks. Well, I'd like to say afternoon to ladies and gentlemen, and thanks for the opportunity to speak today. My wife and I live in Norwood Estate, and it's just a step through the fence to Donovan Park, and it's a lovely park. The things I appreciate about it most are the trees and the shelter, and as you can see, my submission is mostly about shelter. Talking about shelter, really, Donovan Park, and you could say Queen's Park is the same too. It exists in the form it is because of the shelter, that good southwest shelter. Pinus radiata, macrocarpa, Eucalyptus cordata, those are the things. But before I start on that, I'd just give you a brief history. You know, you don't pick up a book without knowing a bit about the author, so I think it's fair enough that you should have an idea where I come from. But this won't take long. I was born in the 40s, and I worked in the off-season from the freezing works in the Forest Service for quite a few seasons. I've planted well over 500,000 trees, probably nearer 1 million. I've been a member of the New Zealand Farm Forestry Association since the 80s. Before that, I was a member of Men of the Trees, and some people around this table might remember Men of Trees, but it's since morphed to be with NZFFA. Had a couple of shelter belts planted, one at both at Morris Bush, one at Bonefield Road in the 90s, and another one in McIver Road in 2006. My family and I, we've got a family forestry block at Dipton, planted in 96, and I'm also an advisor to the Rural Women Forestry Group at Dipton, and have been for a number of years. So I'll just briefly go through my submissions, and perhaps I should say if there's any questions, just don't hesitate to interrupt me, because
From a process perspective, Arthur, we'll wait till you're done and then come in.
Fine.
Thank you, though.
Thanks, that's good. Well, number one in the master plan is, what do you like about Donovan Park? Sheltered even on windy days. Now, that's very important in my view. There's a lot of trees there that are English trees, some quite exotic trees, a lot of deciduous trees, and if those trees don't have shelter from the southwest, they won't even be there. There's been examples in Queen's Park fairly recently, actually, of where trees have come down and let the wind in, and I know very near Jessie Calder Gardens there's at least one huge New Zealand beech tree that's died because of the exposure, perhaps even about 10 years ago when they felled the trees just leading into the Jessie Calder Gardens. They've since been replaced very, very effectively, but they've got to have it. And number three, my areas of interest and aspirations for the future. Well, I would really like to see that shelter maintained. No doubt there'll be submissions from people who live next door to that shelter belt and get very little sun until lunchtime. But I feel that the trees were there first, and they bought knowing those trees would be there. But I do think there's a way that the shelter can be retained, and some of the needs of those people can be met also. I do think there's enough room to have the shelter a bit further into the park, and with the high shelter, and then bring natives out into the west, which would create a good buffer zone. I've put a wee bit in my submission about the ETS. I'm not sure what the story is, but undoubtedly if there's quite a strip of trees planted, it would qualify for the ETS as far as I know. Our family are in the ETS with our forestry block, and it's been very beneficial, and I know the cost of maintaining Donovan Park must be quite high, and anything that could help with those costs I'm sure would be good. Number 6, it says replacing the high shelter. Now, those macrocarpa trees are probably about 60 years old, but as I said before, there's a lot of talk about trying to get them down so these people are adjacent to them are going to get some sun. So I think a good idea would be to do what's been done in Queen's Park very effectively on Calvin Street, and that is to have that shelter belt up along the golf course there, quite a wide belt with macrocarpas, radiata, cordata, quite a few natives in it too, but those 3 first mentioned species are the ones that are going to keep that southwest wind out. I've got in about protection of the valuable trees, but that's essential in my view. Now there's just a couple of kites I'd like to fly, just for fun. I think it'd be quite interesting to monitor the water that goes through the pond. And there's talk, isn't there, about the floodplain there. That would be, even if it was monitored monthly, it might be quite good. Few canoes on the pond, perhaps a wee bit like the Avon in a year or two, might be quite good. And another thing, I don't know if any of you have been to I'm sure some of you will have been to the Hokitika aerial walkway, or just out of Hokitika. It's absolutely fabulous. And those big trees in the centre, which I imagine is where the Donovan homestead was, they're quite old, but they're very sturdy, and they'll be there for another 300 or 400 years if they're allowed to stay. There's herons nesting in them, there's moorporks in them, and I reckon you could do a treetop cafe in them without too much initiative, maybe 10 or 20 years down the track. The only other thing I'd like to say is there's a bit of talk, isn't there, in the media about selling bits off. Well, I think that would be a real shame. I think in the 60s, the people were sitting around the table just like you guys are here now, and you decided Donovan Park would be good for Invercargill. Well, it wouldn't be a good idea, in my view, to sell bits of it off just for the short-term gain. In another 50 years, and that's how long this is pushed out for, this plan, I think there'll definitely be need for another big park, similar to Queen's Park, further out. That's all, thanks.
Thanks, Arthur. Can I ask your suggestion around replacing the shelter belt forward of where it currently is for those who are getting a bit of sun filtration from the current trees, and your suggestion that natives could be used